Welcome to the International HPC Best Practices newsletter. My name is Aditi and I'm from the Pawsey Supercomputing Research Centre in Australia, and I lead the Centre's digital engagement. This newsletter's edition focuses on building communities in HPC. I would like to introduce some guests from NeSI in New Zealand.
NeSI is the New Zealand eScience infrastructure, providing an e-research platform essentially for any New Zealand researcher. So traditionally that's HPC, but just like everyone else around the world, we're having to look at new ways of providing e-research services that enable the research. So everything from data transfer through research software engineering services, training, and HPC. I'm Georgina Ray. I go by George, and I'm the Science Engagement Manager here at NeSI. And so in the engagement space, we really care about those relationships with the research sector, making sure that we have sound relationships that we can communicate out to the researchers and bring their needs back in, and any issues, and deal with them in a timely way.
Hi, I'm Nuria. I work at Research Communities Advisor here at NeSI. We work on building partnerships with research communities within the sector and here in New Zealand, and we learn from them on what their needs are and bring them back into NeSI. That's one of the key parts of our role here.
Hey everyone, so my name is Megan Gidgery and I'm training lead for New Zealand eScience infrastructure. And what that means is I'm kind of this supporter and advocate for researchers in New Zealand looking to upskill, and also for kind of a supporter to those people who want to be trainers and upskill their colleagues and friends. So all things training in New Zealand is something that I like to be across.
Thank you all for joining me. To begin, can you please explain why NeSI is trying to build communities in HPC?
We build and partner with communities. I guess it's a strategy for looking after our various e-research or HPC user segments. From our perspective, community is a group of people that have some kind of shared goals or ambitions. So they have to feel like they belong together. And the key thing here really is that our users, or the science sector at large, they're people. So people thrive on relationships and coming together around some kind of shared identity. So for NeSI, as the national provider of e-research infrastructure in New Zealand, we actually have to serve a broad range of communities. Some are really well established and others are a little bit earlier in their journey. So in terms of well established in New Zealand, we might talk about relationships with climate science community or genomics community, and we're really working with them to increase their e-research capability. And of course, that's a vast sort of catch-all statement. But we might also, another example is where we work alongside researchers who are looking to develop a community in order to leverage some kind of benefit of a shared identity. The classic one here for us would be the research software engineering space, which is led by Nuria over in New Zealand, but also data science is another one where it's, data science is not new, but it's new to many researchers. So what does that mean for our community and our user base? And I guess the other thing in terms of why we think about communities is when we are trying to look for some kind of really fundamental structural change to how we do things. And here I'd use the example of women in HPC, which is relatively new for us in New Zealand, but it's something where we're trying to really change things. So yeah, that's our why.
Thanks, George. Diving deeper into this, how is NeSI building communities in HPC?
There's a few different tactics that we apply at NeSI to build a community in HPC. Partnerships is a key one for us. So now more than ever, collaboration is key to maintaining a progressive and a sustainable research ecosystem. We're a collaboration ourselves, and so we welcome partnerships. A word that comes to mind is from Te Reo, the Māori language, whakawhanaungatanga, and this calls out the process of establishing links and making connections. And it's something that we sort of hold true at NeSI. It's in order to build a shared understanding or a shared understanding with and connect with those communities around aspirations and goals, we have to have these partnerships. So using those to service those communities. So some examples there, we've got Antarctic Science Platform. This is an established research community. They do research on Antarctic stuff, lots of modelling of sea ice or all sorts of really cool stuff, to be honest. They're traditional users of HPC. So for us, working and partnering with their community enables us to learn about their needs in a timely fashion so that we might actually be able to meet them as their ambitions grow. They are a very ambitious research project. Now, another example of applying partnerships as a how of building research communities or HPC communities would be women in HPC. So I called this out a little bit earlier, but given that the women in HPC community is geographically new, new to Australia and New Zealand, we're really working in partnership with Pawsey and NeSI to build scale and momentum in that space and essentially share the load. So we partner to enable us to look after another community. And the other one I'd want to call out is around Genomics Aotearoa. So this is a national investment in genomics capability. Genomics, by its very nature, is a little bit different to the climate modelers. Bioinformaticians are relatively new to e-research. Well, maybe not the bioinformaticians, but the biologists at least. And so as we work with that community, there's a heavy focus around training, for example, and capability build. But we also need to have that strong partnership so that we can build new services. That's something we're doing with them at the moment, and yeah, understand their needs really.
Another key partnership, just carrying on from the theme that George just spoke of, another key partnership for us is with the research software engineering community, which has its roots in the UK. The RSC Australia New Zealand chapter was formally established a couple of years ago, and that was quite a big it's quite a big partnership for us in terms of the RSC community. And this work ties into another key approach of how we build communities here at NeSI, which is by creating forums for gathering. So an important aspect of keeping a community thriving is to create or provide opportunities for people to get together, to share ideas, successes, challenges. And for the RSC community, NeSI hosts a 2-day conference annually, which has been held under a couple of names in the past. But last year, we thought that this conference has become a forum for discussing technical computational work within research. And it had been a while since the RSC community in Australia and New Zealand was formally established. And we had a steering committee that was leading the community as well. And so we put 2 and 2 together and had our first NZRSC conference last year amid the pandemic. It became clear that people really valued getting together, even if it was remotely, because we ended up having our highest ever attendance rate with about 180 people who registered for the conference. And we're sort of in the process of planning our second NZRSC conference this year on September 15th to the 17th. So NeSI really works with different partners to provide opportunities for people to gather and share ideas. And by creating these, it also allows opportunities for cross-pollination between communities. So for example, it allows us to bring considerations around data sovereignty into the data science community or the RSC community, and just brings new perspectives to these communities.
Yeah, thanks. And just to continue on from that, so how is NeSI building community in HPC? So we've heard a little bit about partnership. We've heard a little bit about creating these forums where people can gather, but also NeSI contributing some dedicated resources to maintaining these communities is also something that we take pride in. It's something that we focus on. It takes a lot of care and focused effort to bring people together. Community needs cohesion, and NeSI contributes to this sense of cohesion in the New Zealand research sector by creating community-focused roles for many of its staff. We've already mentioned so far that Nuria, for instance, is very involved with the Australia-New Zealand Research Software Engineering community. She's co-chair of the RSE Steering Committee and works hard to make sure that the needs of the RSEs in the region continue to be addressed. We also have NeSI's communications manager, Jana Mekar, leading our involvement with the Australasia chapter of Women in HPC, with partners in Australia that George had mentioned before. And for me, as NeSI's training lead, I do my best to sustain and grow the digital skills training community in New Zealand, which involves things like supporting or coordinating local training events like ResVaz, Carpentry Connect, and the Carpentries instructor training. I also guide first-time instructors through that process of preparing for and delivering a workshop. It can be something that's a bit intimidating if you haven't done it before. So that support for people, on-the-ground support is key. And perhaps most importantly, I liaise with training leads of partners like Genomics Aotearoa or institutions like Massey University to ensure that they are making the most of the resources and opportunities available to them. So having people in these designated roles at NeSI really kind of boosts our communities and makes sure that we're doing the best we can to make sure that they are sustained and are here to stay.
That's fantastic. And I really see these patterns echo in the Asia Pacific region that we're in. So as we are building these communities, what learnings have you found in this process?
So we've had quite a few learnings along the way, and I'll focus on one of them. So a challenge we faced very early on with the RSE community, for example, was around the name research software engineers, because engineering is a well-established field. People hesitated to sort of associate themselves with it without a formal engineering qualification. So getting people to identify with the community we're building is actually an ongoing challenge for this one. And I'm sure at some stage, most communities face this. How do you get the right people to associate themselves with the community you're trying to build? But over time, we've learned that taking time to define the community and its goals really helps, and really articulating that to people at every opportunity you get actually really helps. And we've also learned to be comfortable with the fact that people take time to come on the journey. And if we're looking to build a sustainable community, it is a marathon and not a sprint. So we're in it for the long haul, and it's okay to take the time.
For me, the learning in community building, being in the training space, I've learned that it's just really important to meet people where they are at instead of trying to force feed solutions that you think people might need. And it's really all about, if we're going to have a healthy community, whether it's the RC community, training community, we have to be committed to working with people and not for people. So not pre-packaging solutions for people. And that kind of means knowing when it's time to listen. And quite often we can do a lot more listening than we are doing. So being cognizant of that has been a key learning for me.
I guess from my perspective, one of the things I've learned over time is you can't take it for granted that if you build it, they'll come. It's an evolving process. You've got to be attuned to what the community needs and responsive. So as Megan said, switching to listening mode. You might know they're an RSE Nuria, but they don't know it yet, and that's just okay. So that's one of the key things I think about. And really coming back to it, it's another Māori word or phrase is he tangata, he tangata, he tangata. It's the people, the people, the people. And in communities, it's all about the community and the people and what they need. And we put everything else aside and work out what they need to do better research.
Thank you all for joining me today. That was a really insightful discussion. I really enjoyed how you are working towards building these communities in HPC and research areas, but most importantly, how you've shared your learnings. I think that's how our community as a whole in HPC can grow and get better at what we're doing and adapting to very changing times. So thank you all so much for your time.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, very cool.
It was actually a really cool reflection thing for the team.
Awesome.
Yeah.